So we'll get started. First of all, thank you everyone who's been able to join tonight. I'm Myrony Reyes. I am the privileged, as I always say, to serve as the president of the SMPA this year. And we are so privileged and thankful that you'll be able to join us for this panel discussion. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there's a few comments and a few updates that I want to provide to our membership who've been able to join. One is the Big Band Dance has been rescheduled. You'll be getting a save the date, but that has been moved to April the 21st. So we hope that you'll still be able to join us on that evening. It still will be at the Grand Summit Hotel, still be our traditional big band dance. And we're looking forward to that a little bit later in the season. The other is for the meeting this evening, or our panel discussion this evening. We definitely are wanting it to be conversational. We would ask that you stay on mute as we're going through. If you have a question that you just want to post in the chat, please feel free. You can do that into the chat session of the Zoom. I'll be watching it. I can call it out. And we can also have you come off of mute to ask your question itself. So that's up to you, whatever works best. And the last I'll give a plug out is SMPA only runs because of the passion and the perseverance of our membership and our leadership. And so if you're listening in as a parent or a guardian or a patron, we are looking for members who would be willing to be in a leadership role for next year, 2022, 2023. There's a volunteer form on our website that you can complete. You can email me, the smpa.president@gmail.com. If you're not a parent, if you're a student, ask your parent, because this organization only works because people use this as the way they experience music beyond high school. So I would love for those who are so inclined to be part of our leadership team and to help keep this organization doing the amazing stuff that it's done this past year and for the last 40 years. So I'm now going to stop the share on this one, and I think we'll just go back to our panel discussion. And Mr. Bikini, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Myrony. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Really excited about this event tonight. On behalf of all the music teachers here, we want to thank SMPA, Myrony Reyes, for supporting this and their leadership. Tonight, we have an extraordinary panel assembled, multiple alumni, current university students, those working and touring, along with seasoned veterans in the music business who have authored books, performed in over a dozen Broadway shows, toured nationally and internationally, and perform with some of the leading musicians in the world. So we're fortunate in Summit. We have a great, really strong music program. We give the students a lot of opportunities to perform various venues. We performed at Carnegie Hall. We just performed this year as a college pep band at the Prudential Center. We do tours and things like that. And a lot of students want to continue performing, either maybe as a non-major in college in the marching band, the pep band, the jazz band, things like that. Some students want to go into it as a performance focus, music education, things like that. So tonight we're hoping with these panelists here, they can give us some insight, talk about their journeys, their paths, and what it was like, how they got to do what they're doing, and help us parents and students, guide us, give them some guidance. Again, questions, please feel free to jump in and put it into the chat, and we will call on you or read your question throughout the night. I'd like to start with introducing the panel, and I'm going to ask each panelist after I introduce you to answer these three questions. What's the first instrument you played? It may be different than what you currently play and make a living at. What part of the country are you zooming in from? I know we have people from all over the country. And what's a highlight, one of your great memorial performances you've done recently, something, or even in the past, you're like, wow, this is a great concert, and just what's a real memory you have of a performance. So I'd like to start with Ivan Funk Boy Bodley, one of the great, busiest freelance bass players in New York City, who's performed with over 50 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, over 12 Broadway shows, and a recent author of a memoir. Please welcome Ivan.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. That's a straight question. The first instrument I ever played was viola, which has nothing to do with how I make my living now as a bass player. I'm based in New York City, although I'm zooming in from an undisclosed location upstate that I can't talk about. And memorable performances, hard to say. Possibly the Obama inaugural ball with Sam Moore from Sam and Dave, Sting, and Elvis Costello. That was probably one of my all-time, lifetime big ones. I'll pass the baton to you.
Awesome. Wow. What cool memory. I can
May I,
imagine.
Alex, may I
Yes.
ask a question of Ivan, since this is conversational? Ivan, if you played bass with Sting on the same stage, did Sting just sing or he didn't play bass that night?
He played guitar that particular night.
Very good.
And-
Thank you, Alex, for letting me have a conversation with Ivan.
That's a great question.
And he sang as well.
Dave, that's a great question, but no more. Go on mute. No. Dave and I have known each other for 30 years. Next, I'd like to introduce Alex Giosa. Alex is a talented and versatile drummer and percussionist, currently one of the main substitute drummers for Hamilton on Broadway. Please welcome Alex Giosa.
Thank you for having me. To answer the questions, the first instrument I played, I make my living playing drums now. I started as a percussionist, so I was rudimental snare drum and timpani and xylophone and all of that. I play mostly drums now. I'm zooming in from my studio up in Connecticut, and probably the most memorable gig moment I could think was I got to play a production of In the Heights at the Kennedy Center. It was really the first big gig of that level I had ever had. I got recommended for it and kind of thrown in really quick. I got to perform it for Lin-Manuel Miranda and Alex Lacamoire and play it for the composer, which is pretty amazing. And it was kind of my first taste of doing something like that. And it's I'll always, that one, the sheer terror alone of just walking into that orchestra read for the first time will always stick with me.
Alex, quick question about that one. I heard an interview with Lynn. Is that when he was casting the movie too, and he saw who was playing his role in that show?
So there was an actor who was slated to play Usnavi. I forget his name off the top of my head. He injured himself about 2 weeks before the production was to go up. So Anthony Ramos jumped in at the last minute. He learned the whole show in 2 weeks. And I don't know if that's when Lynn decided to cast him in the movie. I'm not sure, but he was our Usnavi. Vanessa Hudgens played Vanessa. It was pretty cool, and he killed it back then. He killed it in the movie. It's
I think I remember Lynn said that Lynn played Usnavi where Anthony Ramos was Usnavi, but I believe he was referring to that role. Actually.
Oh wow, I never heard that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh, wow.
Thanks, Alex. Next is Emily Kane, Summit High School alum, junior at the University of Notre Dame, studying applied and computational mathematics and statistics with the music performance and education concentration. Welcome, Emily.
Hi guys. The first instrument I ever played was the clarinet, and I still play it now. Currently zooming in from the music library at the University of Notre Dame. And one of my absolute all-time favorite performances was my freshman year of college, pre-COVID. It was a night game against USC, and the student section was hyped. And our halftime show was all about NASA. So we had this formation. We formed a rocket, spelled out NASA. We marched 8 to 5 down this field, and oh my God, they went wild. Like you could hear them. So I'm still riding that high from like 2.5 years ago.
That's so cool. And that's one of the great things we talk about, continuing music in college and getting those kind of experiences. So I'd like you to share more during the conversation about that, Emily. Thank you. Next is Scott Greenblatt, Summit High School alum, keyboardist, audio engineer, and producer, completing his master's in audio arts at Syracuse University, and a member of the indie pop band No New Friends. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. My name's Scott. I'm zooming from Syracuse, New York. It's like -3 degrees right now. Keyboard was my piano. I would say piano was my first instrument, even though I would call myself a keyboardist now. I play a lot more synths than I do piano these days. And most memorable recent performance for me would be opening for a band called Melt, who I followed when I was in high school. And then my band just got the opportunity to open for them when they were on tour at a venue in Syracuse in October, I think. So that was pretty cool because we sold out this venue for an artist who I'd been listening to for a couple of years. So that was a pretty cool moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Next, Josue Vasquez, or Summit High School alum as well, member of the marching band staff here in Summit, senior at William Patterson University, studying music education, preparing for his senior recital. Welcome, Josue.
Hello, my name's Josue. My first instrument that I played is the saxophone, which is something that I still do. I'm currently Zooming from the great town of Summit, New Jersey. And my most memorable performance, I would say, I had the opportunity to go to NYU with a quartet that I play with. I'm the bari player for that quartet, and we got to work with Paul Cohen, who's a big classical saxophonist, and we got to play with him, being coached by him, and do a lot of recordings. So it was a lot of fun there.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Josue. Next, Sarah Haynes, also Summit High School alum, multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and currently on the road with the national tour of Hamilton. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, all. Thanks for having me. This is fun. I'm glad you asked me back after last year. So I'm currently Zooming in from Dayton, Ohio, where Hamilton's going to begin our run on Wednesday. My first instrument was the violin. I switched a couple of times. I finished my undergrad in viola, but now on Hamilton, I double on both viola and violin, although it's primarily a viola book. And I think a very memorable performance experience that I had was my Broadway debut, the first time I ever played a Broadway show. I played a show called Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, and the band is on stage for that show, so actually like the string section is in the middle of the stage in the Imperial Theater, which is where Ain't Too Proud was until just last week. And I'm in costume. I'm on stage with like Josh Groban's in the show, and I knew a bunch of the actors in the show, so it was kind of a really exciting moment for me. And also I'd been working for a while to try to get to Broadway, so I was glad to have made it, and I basically forgot most of the performance because it's such a stressful thing to do for the first time. But you can, yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Sarah. And last but not least, Mr. David Philp, Assistant Professor of Music Management and Popular Music Studies at William Patterson University, whose career includes over 20 years in the entertainment industry, working for multiple record labels. Welcome, Dave Philp.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. By the way, Alex, I will tell you how to Venmo me so I can get paid for this. So I appreciate that. So I'm currently Zooming from Alex's attic. He doesn't know that yet, so come on up. It's a little chilly up here. My first instrument was a drum set when I was about 5 years old. I went to somebody's house and saw a drum set, and I sat on it, and I sucked. But then at school, I grew up in Madison, New Jersey. They made us play a non-drum instrument in 3rd and 4th grade, I think. So I played trumpet. And then I was able to take up drums in 5th grade, and then I became a drummer. Then I went to school with Alex at William Patterson as a percussionist. And as a performer, my greatest moment was probably just a few years ago at William Patterson. I produced this Best of the 80s show that featured our students and also some people from the 80s, like Daryl McDaniels, who was from Run DMC. He was the DMC from Run DMC. And one of the other people was Taylor Dane, who had a bunch of hits in the 80s. And I got to play drums behind her as she came out, and she was supposed to do 2 sets with us of songs. And in the first set, they, unbeknownst to anybody but the stage crew, they started playing, they had a fog machine go. And she had a horrible allergic reaction in the middle of the song to the fog machine. So she was able to finish the set, and then we had intermission, and then she never came back. So, but we got that first bit, and I got to play a little bit of drums behind her. I'm fairly certain that she fell in love with me right away, but I could never be sure because of the fog machine. I'm married, it didn't matter, but it would have been a cool story to tell you guys that truthfully, yes, Taylor Dane loves me. I don't know, but that's where I'm with that. Thank you.
Dave, thanks so much. Myron, if you could just keep, I can't see all the stuff on my screen, but chat or anything comes in, please jump in so we can, is there already something in there? But, okay, good. So let's jump right in. I want to talk about, right off the bat, a lot of students are concerned about, they're going to college. How do they balance these different activities? So I'm going to start with Emily. I'm going to throw it right to you, Emily. Marching band, Notre Dame. You're rehearsing all the time. You got all these games. How do you do that and do computational science, statistics, all that stuff in math? How do you do it?
Google Calendar, Mr. B. Google Calendar. I probably also shouldn't tell you this, but like for certain classes, you got to know when you can get away with not doing the reading. And that's a way, basically, you got to prioritize. You got to like realize like what's most important: schoolwork, rehearsal, homework, sleep. Like you're not going to be able to do all of that all of the time. So you need to think to yourself, like, what am I going to let go and what am I going to prioritize this week, this month, today?
And you found that you're able to do that and you figured it out fairly quickly and it all worked out for you.
Yeah. Some in high school really prepared me well because I took difficult course loads there. So transitioning to college was not as difficult as I had anticipated because I took so many AP classes in high school.
Great. Scott, can you talk a little bit about that up at Syracuse, where you were there undergrad and how you balance your performance groups and your studies and things like that?
For sure, yeah. One of the first things that I did when I came to Syracuse was sought at the jazz program because I was like, that was where I was comfortable in Summit, and I felt like I would meet some like-minded people, especially at like a fairly larger school than I anticipated going to. So like first week I went to the jazz auditions. I see someone wearing like a Snarky Puppy shirt. I'm like, all right, like I can probably get along with some of these people. And then from there, like get into the jazz group and then just start jamming with other people. And then it's pretty much just like about finding your own routine. So like I was able to juggle being in the jazz band along with playing in my own band extracurricularly on top of course load. Like the thing that's way better than high school is that like you can decide your own routine. So like I would do my homework throughout the day so that I wouldn't have anything to do at night and stuff like that, and just focus on music. So pretty manageable in terms of finding a balance between music and academics, especially when you're kind of like tying two things together.
Sarah, were you you were a music major undergrad, correct?
Yeah, I was a performance major.
Can you talk a little bit about audition preparation?
Oh boy, can I. Yeah, do way more of it than you think you need to is my first bit of advice. I actually, I kind of decided I wanted to major in music a little bit later than I think most people do. I didn't really figure it out until I was 16, and then, I'd had my violin teacher telling me for years, he's like, you really need to focus on something because, like, as you remember, when I was in high school, I played in the jazz band and I sang in the choir and I did a little bit of everything. I was on stage for theater. So I was a little all over the place, and ultimately that mentality benefited me a lot. But when it came down to getting into a music school, I really needed to kind of like sit myself down and decide that I was just going to spend most of my time playing the violin, because that's how you win an audition. Is you really have to be like 10 times, 15 times, 100 times more prepared than you think you are. In order to really do your best job, because once you walk into an audition room and you're nervous, it's going to just knock you back a couple of pegs, and so you want to be even better than you need to be, and then you really think you are. And really, it's just a lot of slow practice. It's a lot of metronome practice. Like that's really how you have to do it, even though it's tedious, and not just playing through things, but stopping and making sure that each note is really well taken care of and really well considered. And I'm talking mostly for classical auditions. I know that there's different things for jazz and different things for even vocal auditions. But I actually stopped taking auditions for the most part after college because it's not my forte. It's not what I like to do. And thankfully in musical theater, you don't really have to audition to get jobs.
Does anyone else want to jump in from the panel about auditions as students are preparing for their college auditions and things like that? Any advice?
For the last audition I did, I literally, practice rooms are on the 5th and 6th floor. So literally run down 2 flights of stairs, run back up, and then go back into the room and play my piece. Cause I get such horrible nerves that I know I needed an elevated heart rate, like to be able to play competently without breath in order to like do well at an audition.
I would state from,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, Alex. Yeah, from William Patterson's perspective in the music department, because I run 2 programs there, and one of them is a bachelor of music program. And both you need to audition for, but for the some are on video, and some are, especially because of COVID. I don't know if any students here have run across that or not, and then some are in person. And just understand that no matter what, the person who's either judging you in your audition or watching the video of you auditioning, they want you to do well. So in terms of, from a confidence perspective of being the person doing that performance, we aren't looking to laugh at you or judge you. And it's not like in the movies where, you know, we're sticking our nose up and you're not good enough for us. We want you to be awesome. So we're rooting for you. So understand from our perspective, if you put your feet in our shoes, that's our goal, is to accept you. We want to, because we want you to be that good.
I will say I got really good advice from a teacher after college who was basically like, you also just have to accept that you're gonna suck sometimes. Like, and it's never, ever, ever the end of the world. Like, if you can accept that, especially as you're playing in the moment, like if you make a mistake, just let it go. And that was some of the best advice I ever got.
I actually had a college audition. I fell into what I'd say was a little pitfall, which I would tell people to avoid. I mean, I don't know, everyone's different in the way they learn, but I paced myself. I worked my pieces for a long time, learned them really solidly. And I had one audition, which is funny because it was actually at the school I ended up going to, and I felt I bombed it. But they were backed up that day, and they left me in a room with a marimba for about 4 hours. And I ran my audition piece about 25,000 times in that 4 hours. And even though I knew the piece and had really practiced it well and did well everywhere else, I bombed the marimba piece, that audition. I got into my own head and just completely destroyed myself. So when the time comes, if you prep methodically and you prep over time, I guess it would be the equivalent of don't try to cram for the test the night before. You know, when you got it, you've got it. You know, you are going to make mistakes, but I would avoid locking yourself in a room and shedding the thing 25,000 times the day of or the night before. I think that's a really bad way to go about it. And I did it to myself. So figured I'd throw that in there.
Thank you. We just had region and all-state auditions. And the biggest thing that the students come back with is just how they psych themselves out. They bomb this, they bomb that. I don't know if there's any answer to it. I've dealt with nerves, obviously, as well as a performer. I don't know if anybody has an answer. Ivan, you've been doing this the longest. Do you have any solution to this problem?
Every time I've auditioned for something, I haven't gotten it. So I'm not a great one to give advice in that regard. I definitely agree, though, with the idea of over-preparing, and I definitely agree with the idea of over-preparing over time. Like, run the piece once a day for a month, rather than 18 times right before the audition. But again, like I said, every time I've gone to an audition, they've said, no, thank you. I'm like, okay. And I've had a 30-year career anyway. So, you know, maybe that's not the skill you need to succeed.
Right. I guess for specific things like an orchestra or something like that. But a lot of you folks who are our most veteran performers, Sarah, Ivan, Alex, you guys have been out there doing it. And you kind of had very unique, I believe, paths in terms of getting to where you are now. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that and how you arrived. It wasn't through traditional means of auditioning, but how did you get there? How did you get to where you're at? Who wants to jump in on that first?
I can go on it because I led a very kind of unorthodox path that took me a long time to figure out I mean, I guess every path is unorthodox, but I thought I wanted to go to school for classical music. I was telling myself that I didn't really listen to, I was young and didn't really listen to what was going on in my head, and went on this path. I ended up burning out on it and dropping out of music school after a couple of years. I couldn't do the classical thing anymore. And then I kind of had to figure it out from there. I didn't have the chops to get into a jazz program. I wasn't really a drummer, but I knew I wanted to play drums. So I was very lucky. I got a job working at my local drum shop. I ended up managing the place for 5 years, met a lot of drummers there. Then I got to set up Dennis Chambers drums and, all these, it was a really cool world. And I studied and sort of made my way up through a whole bunch of different private teachers, learning all kinds of things. I mean, I still work. I've got a method book right here I'm working through right now just to work on some stuff. And eventually, the drummer, who's now one of my best buddies, who I sub for at Hamilton, Andres Ferrero, walked into the drum shop that I was managing, and I was a big fan of his work, and we kind of met, and I started teching for him. I started engineering. I'm an audio engineer too, so I started engineering at his home studio, cutting sessions with him, and then of proving over time that I could be reliable for what he needed while still working day jobs to support myself. And I think he kind of saw my grind over time. And when a sub position opened up, he said, if you want to go for it, because sort of proving yourself that way. So I didn't really get in as a drummer. I know Sarah mentioned it earlier. I think keeping a lot of irons in the fire in that way it might not be the best thing to do in some situations, like when you're preparing for auditions. Knowing a little bit about this and knowing a little bit about that and keeping yourself rounded is something that's gotten me places. So it's been sort of a roundabout way of doing things, but I was able to figure that part out over time.
So you work at a drum shop, in works the drummer from Hamilton, and now you're playing Hamilton. I mean, wow, that's a very
before Hamilton was a thing. He was on tour with the Book of Mormon, and he was on a day off, and he asked about coming in and teaching some lessons and giving a clinic. And I grew up in a youth theater, which is a whole nother story, in my town. And the director, who I worked with for many, many years there, retired on the show in the Heights. So I had freshly played in the Heights. I knew all about it. I was in love with the music. So meeting Andres I recognized him immediately, and it kind of just went from there. It didn't happen overnight, and it was kind of a long thing, but that's, I guess, the short of it.
Great. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, Alex. I mean, in a very roundabout way, part of the way that I did get my break to get this Hamilton job was by working in a violin shop after I graduated from college. It was, I was like the girl in the shop, like answering the phones and like playing instruments for people who came in wanting to hear them. And then I was like selling people strings. And there was a Broadway violinist who came in every once in a while who I would sell him strings, and then years later, I ran into him on the subway and he recognized me. And we just chatted, and it turned out he was the concertmaster on Finding Neverland. And he's like, just come sit in the pit, just come sit in. And then we just stayed in touch. And then years later, when I texted him and I was like, hey, I'm subbing on Great Comet now. And he is now the concertmaster of Dear Evan Hansen. And so the theaters are right next door to each other. And I was like, hey, let's get coffee. We're right next door. Let's get coffee. And he sat me down and was like, I have an opportunity to recommend people for the Hamilton tour. Would you be interested? And and it's just because I didn't remember him from the violin shop when he struck up this conversation on the subway. So it was mostly just me striking up a conversation in the subway with a stranger who was carrying a violin, wearing all black, getting on the subway at 42nd Street at 10:30 at night. So obviously he was a Broadway player, but it was a little bit of right place, right time, and also just being ready to take the opportunity when it was given to me. I think that's the thing about luck, is you can have all the luck in the world, but you have to be ready for it too.
Sure. It's amazing. So I think the answer here now is go work Elefante music students and wait for somebody to walk in and get the gig. And again, I know there's students out there. Please, you have a great panel here with incredible knowledge. Ask a question. Please feel free. Ivan, 30 plus years. How'd you do it? What's the way? And give us a little rundown.
I thought that was sort of interesting that Sarah was saying she wasn't sure she was going to be a music major until she was 16. I didn't start at 17, and I went to college completely as a non-music major, as an engineer. Then I got a job in the music industry. I was a publicist for Epic Records, a major label. Then I quit that and went to Berklee when I was 26. So I went really, really kind of late in life. And after I graduated Berklee, moved back to New York City where I'd been before. And it's the same thing that you're saying by working in the music store, whatever. It's one foot in front of the other. It's meeting this person who knows that person who knows the other person. And a friend of mine, this is exactly how this happened. A friend of mine who I went to college the first time with in New Orleans, her sister was living in New York and knew a guy who was like the music director for the Shirelles, and had just heard that I had just graduated Berklee and they needed a bass player desperately for a gig up in Massachusetts. And the criterion was sort of if I could play at all, I had the gig, you know. So he came to see me do a $50 blues gig on Spring Street at, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning. And clearly he knew that I graduated from Berklee. He didn't know anything else about me other than the fact that I, you know, had a music degree and I could play a 12-bar blues competently. He handed me an envelope with charts and a cassette, normal bias cassette tape in it of this Shirelles. It's 1993. And then everything that I've done sort of logically progressed from that. So after the Shirelles came the Tokens and the Drifters and the Platters and the Coasters and the Uptown Horns. The Uptown Horns led to Solomon Burke and Sam Moore from Sam and Dave and all these things. Like it was all one foot in front of the other. That took, you know, roughly a decade or so to get up on my feet. When I got to New York, you know, after music school, it took me, I was typing resumes for the people the phone company was laying off for 3 years, and then working at night until I could build up enough income from the music to sort of, you know, tip the scale to make that full-time thing. So it's very kind of logical in a way in retrospect, but going into it, it's very difficult to plan, because what I knew I was going to do is I was going to move to New York. I was to become a fusion jazz musician. I was definitely going to play on the David Letterman show, the Tonight Show, Madison Square Garden, and what else? Like basically all the plans that I had, absolutely none of them have come to fruition. Not one of those things has happened, but 1,000 other things have happened in retrospect. And, you know, here I am talking to you 50 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame members later. So it's very difficult to plan exactly how you're going to do it, but somehow things work out if you're prepared and you have your stuff together and you're ready for the opportunities when they arise.
So how does a parent or a 18-year-old student, you know, these other degrees, you go to school and you become this, you go to law school. So with music, you're saying just what, one from the front of the other, work hard at it and see what happens. I mean, what do you tell parents?
Parents, I don't know. I'm talking more to the musician. Parents, I have to say, I'm sorry that your child is my condolences. But being a musician, yeah, you've got to prepare. You've got to know your, you know, and when that happens, if they're giving you an opportunity and you don't have the chops or the wherewithal to be able to actually follow through with that, then that opportunity passes by, you know. But if you do, and then, you know, that'll lead to the next door and the next door and the next door. But it's difficult to aim specifically, you know. I mean, if you decide you want to be only a Broadway musician, well, then you've got to come and sort of hang out in Midtown and find out where the players are out, you know, at the Long Room bar that they all hang out in after the show. And there's a kind of a socialization path that you walk to sort of get into those scenes, you know. But
it's Hurley's.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know, but again, it's one foot in front of the other, and it's who you know and how you present yourself, and also what skill set you have, you know, once those opportunities arise.
Dave, can you talk a little bit from the higher ed perspective in terms of the programs you're putting out there, supporting, and that students are getting into, and how you guys help prepare them for these career paths.
Yeah, well, I also wanted to, well, part of it, I think, ties into what Ivan, Sarah, and Alex just said. The thread that ties in each of their stories is what? Any students out there want to answer that question? I'm sure you're all shy and don't want to do it. I'm sure you're scared to death, and that's why your cameras are off. I will answer for you, so that way you do not have to sweat. But the tie between all three of their stories is they spoke to people, they networked with people. Sarah's is a great story where she just stayed in contact with that one person, you know, hey, and then she bumped into the person and then sat in on the pit. I mean, then Alex just bumped into the person in the store and taking time. And then even Ivan, you know, over 10 years, making these connections and going. So, you can go to school and you can be a straight A student, but a lot of it is also, you can't hide. You can't hide behind your marimba or your horn or your instrument. You have to be able to hustle a little bit. Unless you go, even if you like a music ed major, you want to get a gig teaching, you still have to be able to have that personality, be outgoing enough to be able to have conversations with people and have people want to work with you or want to hire you. And I think keeping in touch with people is just as important. I mean, Alex, look, you and I went to college together, and here we are, like you said, 5 years later, you know, still chatting away. But so much of it is that, you know, and I would say to any college student, so much, you're going to sit in your class, you're going to learn your stuff, you're going to have your rehearsals and your ensembles and everything, but so much of it is the person sitting to your right or to your left or in front of you, getting to know those people and getting those relationships and building on them, because that's what you're going to draw upon in 2, 3, 10, 20 years from now. I'm still friends with people from college. I still connect with them on a musical or a business sense. I manage artists as well. And in fact, one of my college roommates is a consultant for some different hotel chains. And I was talking with him just a week ago about one of the people I manage and how she can connect with one of his hotel chains. So it all ties in. So I would say every student on here, you never know who you're going to meet, and then just stay in contact and just don't be afraid to buy somebody a coffee at Starbucks or say, can I pick your brain for 10 minutes on the phone or on WhatsApp or whatever it is. That to me is huge there. That's what I say to people.
Cool. You mentioned music ed. Josue, jump in and talk about the music ed track. That may be one of the safest tracks to go in a sense for this whole industry. And you're in it right now. You're finishing up. You're going to be student teaching. Talk a little bit about your experiences with that.
Music education is a lot when it comes to school. I feel like it's more of like a double major in a sense, where you're focusing on the educational purposes of like what's it like to teach and deal with kids and all that stuff, but also you're learning how to perform as well. I'm lucky enough to have a teacher who also pushes my performance levels. So he always tells me that you can't, it's to teach, you also have to know how to play and what to listen for. So it's a lot of knowing the musical aspects, and that also comes from like working with ensembles and different people. And what like Professor Philip was saying was networking is a big thing. So like while in school, I encourage people to join clubs, join different organizations. There's a lot of organizations for different things, whether you're in music business and management, or if you're an educator, a performer. Just get out there, talk to people, and join random stuff and meet like-minded people.
Cool. Thank you. Want to just throw this out to everybody. What are some of the most important traits, personal qualities needed today to be successful in music? Alex? Yep.
Show up on time. Actually, let me rephrase that. Show up early to be on time. That's like, and I had it happen. It was maybe a few weeks ago where I got the call I got a call. It was actually pretty late in the day, and my heart rate jumped as soon as I got the call. And the call was essentially saying, "You're the only drummer available to play Hamilton who doesn't have COVID or is feeling sick. When can you get here?" And I had kind of been feeling like that was going to happen because it was going around. So I made myself available. I didn't think I was going to play that night, but I kind of just got the black clothes on, sort of got ready, and was able to get there for the show. So being available, being on time, it's huge, at least for what, I do as a sub on a show.
One thing I'll say, which kind of ties in actually to what Professor Philp was saying earlier, is being flexible. And actually Ivan too, saying that it took 10 years of kind of navigating this industry to really get your like feel settled in it. I think one of the best things that I ever did for my career was just to, if I was available for something and it sounded like something I wanted to do, I did it. I said yes to everything I could for the longest time, just because it gave me so many different, perspectives and opportunities. And that's kind of what I was referring to way in the beginning when I said like having a lot of irons in the fire was something that really benefited me ultimately, even though it took a while of being focused to get back to that. Because like during COVID, when we were out of work for 18 months, I didn't really know what to do with myself for a while, but I had started, writing music with bands and stuff, and I have my own singer-songwriter project that I had, it's always taken a back seat. And during COVID, it was finally the first time I was able to really like focus on that. And now I've actually moved, like I'm putting out an album in a month, but then I'm also like, I've moved into trying to start writing for ads and TV. And I've had, very small successes with that recently, but it's something that if I wasn't flexible and I wasn't always kind of looking for ways to use my energy, I think that might never have happened. But it's also like it's this whole new world that I can still do that kind of work while I'm on tour, and when I'm during my free time when I'm not playing the show. And so I think being open-minded and being flexible and being genuinely like excited about, having opportunities. Don't say yes to something if you're going to go there and hate it. Like that's not going to benefit you or anyone else around you. But if you can be there and be like present and excited, I think that's one of the best things you can do to give yourself an opportunity in a music career.
Thanks, Sarah.
I could add to what they're saying in terms of personality types, be on time, absolutely. Be prepared, absolutely. Be a nice person. Be a nice person, because there are so many reasons you're going to get hired for a gig. I know people that are better players that have been passed by for gigs because they're not pleasant to be around, because you're going to have to be in a pit with them or on a bus or on a plane for way more hours than you're performing with them. So it just behooves you to just be a nice person. It's not hard to do. As going back to the networking thing, also very important, and I'm terrible at it. I hate doing it, and not something I'm good at. Many years ago, I printed up these little pink custom guitar picks. I got this idea from a friend of mine. So just anytime you meet somebody, just lay a pick on them, and they're pink. People remember these. So like I've met people who've had, said, "Oh, I know you. I've had your pick." Like I played Lincoln Center, Avery Fisher Hall twice. The second time I played there, I walked in 15 years after the first time I played there, and the stage manager said, "Welcome back. I have your pick." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So you never know what kind of impression you're going to leave, but hopefully it's a positive one. And the more often that people have a good impression of you, the more often they are likely to call you back to do something.
That's amazing. And I was going to add on to that. The drum shop gig that I had was the more glamorous thing that I did as a day job. It took me a while to get that gig. I actually, to put a roof over my head, worked at a car dealership for a while selling cars. It was soul-sucking work, and I don't always like to think about that time, but at the same time, it was one of the best times in my life because I learned those skills there. I learned how to always have a business card on me and how to be able to approach someone and hand it out in a way that wasn't annoying and made them want to walk away from me. I learned how to call someone back even if I knew it might be a little awkward. I learned to always carry something to take notes down, how to, you know, it used to be a pad and pen, now it's just my phone with my notes. But I learned to always be ready to take something down and record. And those are, I didn't have those, I was never taught those skills, not in high school, not in music school, the time that I was there. And doing that, it's like the having that the URL on the pick like that. It's having that in the right place. Like you can be in the right place at the right time, but if you're not also, I think Sarah said it earlier, if you're not also prepared to be in that right place at that right time and make something of it, then it all just falls for nothing. So I can't say I'd necessarily recommend you go out and try to get a job selling Chevys, but I learned a lot from it. I learned those skills, and I will always carry those skills with me because I think those are some of the most important skills a musician can have.
Great. Anyone else?
Let me jump on. Yeah, something Alex just said. And it sort of touches with, I'm sure everybody's dealt with this here, in terms of the mental health aspect of music. It's like you're always aiming for that high. You're aiming for that one gig, that one awesome show, that incredible performance. And every once in a while you do it. And then once you do it, you think it's going to happen every time. And of course it doesn't. And then the next time you're just going to fall flat on your face. And I think a couple of you have mentioned bad auditions or bad whatever. In this whole process of I go to school to do music and then I get out and I'm trying to do music. Listen to what Alex just said. He sold cars. I ended up, I had to sell kitchens. I had to sell what do you call it? Cabinet redos and all that kind of stuff. It sucked. Like you mentioned, soul sucking. It's awful, but that's, you got to learn from it. And you do need to realize there's an up and a down. And when you're down, realize that it does get better and you're working towards something. Ultimately, you're going to, like Alex just learned different lessons because he was looking to learn. He was like, what can I take from this to do better? And I think that's what we all have to do, So I would totally recommend a lot of the things people saying here are gold. So I hope you guys are really listening.
Can I jump in real quick? I also want to say, we're saying all this stuff like, don't miss an opportunity, meet everybody you can that's possible. But also, when you have that bad day, when you have that bad audition, it's not the end of the world either. And I think it's really important to remember that part of it. I'm going to tell a story which I hate, and I still cringe to this day. It's been 9 years since this happened. I got fired by Natalie Merchant when I was 24 years old. I was supposed to go on tour with her, and it was my first big break, and I was so excited about this gig, and she just didn't like me. It's not like I was doing a bad job. We just the personalities didn't work out, and she didn't want to be on a tour bus with me for 3 months. And I got a phone call from her manager, and I've never really gotten fired before, so I was devastated. And this was more money than I had ever made as a musician, and it was all of these amazing things. And that summer, when I was supposed to be on tour with Natalie Merchant, I ended up doing a lot of really amazing stuff that I would never have been able to do if I was on this tour. And a lot of that stuff that I did directly led to everything that I'm doing now. So it's not just because something doesn't go the way you want it to, doesn't mean that it's not going the way that it should. And I think that there's, don't put so much pressure on yourself that you burn yourself out or that you go crazy trying to make every opportunity work, because eventually the opportunities that you should have will find you.
I mean, look at the whole COVID situation. It's been having to adapt and try, I look back at it now, we're going on 2 years, and everyone has different experiences. So, I'll say my piece, but I've seen some incredible things come out of it. You said you shifted your focus a little bit and started focusing on your own music a little bit more. And I got to substitute teach high school music for a bit, like long-term sub high school music for a teacher that couldn't be there in person. And met some amazing kids and got to work on, I put together a home studio, started working on projects, and the path is not straight and the path is never defined. You're always going to be going from point to point to point, and kind of figuring that out along the way. But I 100% agree, when it just looks like the world has ended and you either have that bad performance or you get fired from that gig or someone tells you no or doesn't like what you do, sometimes the best things come out of that. So don't ever let it stop you, ever.
Also, students, like the fact that you're here now, that speaks volumes, because I didn't think anything musical would happen for me until I attended this panel 3 years ago. And I've done things since then, and it's been pretty cool. So just the fact that you're here demonstrates that you want this. So hold on to that and keep going.
Awesome. Really great stuff. I can't believe Natalie Merchant didn't like you, Sarah. How's that possible?
I asked too many questions. I think she thought I was trying to make her feel stupid because they were like musical questions and like articulation stuff. And I could see her getting annoyed, but I was like, I just want to make sure we sound good. But sometimes, and I learned this lesson on this gig, like sometimes people just want you to show up and shut up and do your job. And I was not there yet.
Sure. Hey, I got a question from a colleague who wanted to know about a couple of things. We actually had a large grant. Mr. King just put in a huge, we had put in a sound booth room in the chorus room, a whole new audio engineering thing. We have a new course now on audio engineering and recording and things like that, producing. Scott, do you want to talk about that a little bit? I don't know if you know what Mr. King put in, but
I don't, but I'm already super jealous. What is this course?
It's really awesome. I don't know if Mr. King wants to jump in, but really, really awesome course. And kids are really interested in this. Obviously, they have their home computer systems. Mr. King, there he is. Do you want to jump in on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, everybody. We put in a grant and wrote a new course. It's called Audio Engineering and Digital Music Production. It's a 1-semester course. It just started this fall, and in it, students are working with Pro Tools and MIDI controllers, and now we have a full soundproof room that you can put multiple people in, and all the hardware and equipment and interfaces and microphones. So we're just getting started. Just finishing the first semester, and actually some of the students on this call tonight are actually going to be starting the class on Thursday for semester 2. So we're really excited about that.
I'm jealous now too.
Yeah, that's super amazing. If I had any Pro Tools experience going into college, I would have already been a lot more ahead of where I am right now, because I deal with that stuff all the time. And speaking on what Alex was saying earlier about the path not always being straight ahead, like I've always known, like in my heart of hearts, like I'm going to do something having to do with music. Didn't necessarily see the audio engineering path being that path, but it's led me down a lot of different avenues that's allowed me to stay so close to it. Sitting behind the console, mixing other people's music for them, as well as tracking keys for my own music and other people's projects. I'm super interested. We'll talk more about that after. I want to hear more about this course. But I would say like the most general piece of advice that I can give is just like stay as close to the music as you can. I had an opportunity to study music business, and I ended up going to school for television, radio, and film because I thought that it would be more artistic, and it led me to end up doing more audio stuff. Because I don't want to deal with the businessy stuff. I wasn't as interested in the law, whatever. It's all knowledge you have to know, but that's not what I want to be doing. So the most general piece of advice I could give is if you want to make this a thing, it's very attainable in 2022 to get your voice out there. So just stay as close to the music as you can.
The audio thing is I tell every musician I come across these days, even if you just learn a little bit, even if you don't want to go the audio route, you know, and be an audio engineer, I mean, with just here, like I've learned enough about audio to know the way that drums respond under microphones and to know the way that microphones react with all of this to, I mean, I am actually an audio geek and have a whole studio set up and love it. But even if you don't want to go there, just, you know, if you go on a recording session or, you know, if you're looking to perform, you know, on the bigger stages, you're probably going to be amplified at some point. And just to know how to kind of hone your sound to work better under a microphone, knowing a little bit about what the audio engineer does so that you can make their life easier. I've actually found that it makes me more hireable. Because, you know, when I show up to someone else's studio, I can show up with different types of muffling to put into the bass drum because I know they're going to want certain sounds, or different types of things to put on top of the snare drum, or ways to tune the toms, different cymbals because I know they'll respond to certain microphones better. And so, you know, even if you're thinking of going the performance route and you're not necessarily looking to be an audio engineer or work in a big studio, I would strongly recommend to all of you, you've got an audio lab in your school, take those courses. Take those courses, learn a little bit about how it works on that side. It's amazing stuff, and it will help you. I believe it will help you so much as a musician. Plus, I don't get yelled at by the engineers when I show up on a stage drum kit, you know, they're, okay, it works. I don't have to have the tension. So it's great.
Thanks, Alex. You hear that, students? Take Mr. King's course. So we're nearing the end of our time together. We just want to open it up again to the floor, students, any parents. I know we've had parent questions in the past. You hear what a great panel this is. Please, anybody?
I actually have a question for Scott, if that's okay.
Sure.
Scott, are you in the Bandier program? Is that the Syracuse?
Bandier program is the music business program that I decided not to do, but now
I see. My cousin is there now, which is why I was curious. Spencer Haynes. Is his
Spencer?
name.
I actually was just in a course with him last semester.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you find that program, like, are you able to take advantage of that program at all? It's a really cool program. I'm
For
like
sure.
super jealous that he's there.
Yeah, well, so now that I'm doing a graduate program here, a lot of the stuff that I do is like intertwined in the business aspect of it as well. So I'm kind of more in the engineering route, actually mixing and recording people. But I took a class last semester about like radio, the future of radio, and like NFTs are a big conversation about the future of the music industry now. How, yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but yeah, the Bandier program is super cool. And if anybody's actually looking at that, I can answer any Syracuse related questions.
I just feel like we talked a lot about like being a musician, you know, as a player, but there's so many aspects of the music business that actually have really cool opportunities. Like Ivan, you said you were a publicist, and, you know, Professor Philp, you're in management. Like those are all also, I know a lot of people who majored in performance who ended up in those areas of the business. I went to NYU, and NYU has a great music business program as well. So I just like being a musician is so many different things. And I think there's the performance aspect of it, but also most of the people I know do a little bit of other things in the business as well. Just to throw that out there. I know that's kind of a big topic to bring up right at the end of this.
Dave, you have a lot of programs over there. I know that the university is pushing, right?
Yeah, I would say exactly what Sarah, just to jump on what Sarah had to say. If you, unless you're going for music ed, if you're going for any sort of music performance degree, you have to minor in some sort of music business program, or if it's a program in which it's offered as a major and you can also play at the same time, do both. To just play is not the right thing to do, in my opinion. And I've thought this since I was an undergrad and I saw performance majors. Once you get out, you're going to be like Scott Greenblatt, and you're going to be in No New Friends, and you want to know, how do I make money? How do I get my music up so I can stream it? How do I make money from publishing, from sync deals, from live, from recording? All that, what do I do with a manager? What is an agent? What is a promoter? All that stuff. And you need to learn all these things, and you can learn it in a program, in a music business program, whether it's NYU, Bandier, ours at William Patterson. They're all really good, and they're all going to give you that knowledge you're going to learn on your own anyway. So you might as well do it through this. Like I said, I think at the very beginning, they also have internship programs, and it just gets you a foot in the door for something else. Like Ivan was in PR. It just gives you that much more background to be able to do things. So, and it's not a plan B. Some people go, I won't do that because it's plan B and I don't want a safety net, or I'll never, it's part of it, because you're going to graduate and you're going to be like, now what do I do? So you have to learn that stuff anyway. There.
That's a great word.
I have things to add for that. Regarding like the just doing music or not doing music. One of my friends is a pure only music major, but she's graduating a year early and she's going to law school. So like if you're gonna do pure music, like there are other options available to you after graduation. And secondly, as Scott said, like stay close to the music. Like I've found a job working here at the library. Like I'm going to start my shift in half an hour. And I found that, number one, through networking. And number two, I'm realizing that like there are music librarian positions open for the summer. So like I didn't know that this was a thing that I could do, but like I'm really loving it. So when, like, if you start something and you say yes to something, just like see where it takes you, because you could really end up enjoying it.
Thanks, Sarah. Emily, why do I call you Sarah? That's your sister. Sorry, Emily. I don't see. Okay, I'm gonna maybe do a final question. So we just had the opportunity to take our students to Carnegie Hall to see the New York Philharmonic, to the Metropolitan Opera to see the Magic Flute, to a Broadway show. They saw 6 in the last 3 weeks, and it's been really awesome. And like, it's so wild going to these shows and everybody's got the mask on, you're vaccinated, but like, and it's packed, but it's like, we have to do it right after COVID. Like, we have to get back to live performances, and the audiences want it, and it's so cathartic for everybody. I want to ask each of you, how has COVID changed you, and how do you see the industry being changed coming out of this in 30 seconds or less? Sorry, big question, but I just felt I had to ask it. Ivan, you've been around the longest, you've seen the most things. We'll start with you.
30 seconds or less. Okay, so
No.
To the audio engineering question, all of my friends became mixing engineers during COVID, during the lockdown, because they were all working on our own recordings and file sharing, that kind of thing. So that's been a big change in how we're doing things. We're waiting to see if the tours are going to go out. I've been subbing on Broadway and off-Broadway shows, that dealt with the COVID lockdown. I was subbing on Ain't Too Proud, which sadly just closed. I'm subbing currently on Jersey Boys, and that was like they were canceling shows. Is the show on? Is the show off? I got paid for some shows I didn't even play. So it's been a little touch and go here for a minute. But I think that we're past the crust of the wave. I say hopefully, knocking on wood, and I think that we're heading towards having tours going back out in the summer. I'm waiting on a phone call for a tour right now that may or may not happen. So we'll see what happens. And also, one last thing to Sarah's point, like I've been fired from so many gigs. I've been fired from I've had some epic firings, like earth-shattering, life-altering firings. And, I'm still here. I've been called to replace the guy who's been fired as many times as I've been the guy who's been fired. So, it goes around and around. Don't take it too personally. They need somebody who's 5 feet 5 inches tall. And if you're 5 feet 7, then you don't fit the gig. It has nothing to do with you most of the time, so we'll continue on, COVID or not. That's my 2 cents.
All right, great. Alex.
I mean, I think if anything, COVID just kind of upped the ante as far as having to be resourceful. I mean, I got that much better at audio engineering. I was able to find a space to do it. I've actually been tracking more for other people now than I've ever done before. And over the last summer when the COVID numbers were kind of down, I hit the outdoor gig circuit. It was all over the place as much as I could be. So I think it And it just, taught me how to grind that much more and be that much more resourceful. I mean, I'm hoping, getting back into Broadway and actually getting to play again and do the show again and see all those people I hadn't seen in so long. I mean, that was the best thing about going back, is the first day walking in and seeing all these people that it was like we never left each other. We all went right back. But I hope we can just persevere and get through it. And if it is a little touch and go, if it has to be a little touch and go, that's going to be what it's going to be. But I sat in a Broadway theater for the first time and actually watched a show a couple of weeks ago, and it was quite the experience to get to go back in there and have those house lights come down and hear the orchestra come up. It's hard to put words to it, but it's nice to be able to be back to doing this.
Absolutely. Anyone else before we wrap it up? Okay, sure.
I have stories. So they sent me home like spring break of my freshman year. Thank God I had my clarinet with me, because they didn't want us coming back. I had to record my freshman year jury with a piano soundtrack, which was, oh my God, don't want to do that again. Sophomore year was a lot of like rehearsing outside, just praying my clarinet didn't crack. So like orchestra winds, pit rehearsal was outside. One of the musicals I did, we just we're only allowed to record one wind instrument at a time inside. So that was just like lots and lots of extra hours. But it also like opened up a lot of new opportunities, because the 2020 production of Jesus Christ Superstar got postponed. I was in an orchestra then. We ended up doing it, the NDSO and the FTT, the television theater department. We ended up putting it on because of restrictions and distancing and everything in the football stadium. Oh my God. I also said that was the coolest thing ever, because it really was. So I think it just came down to flexibility and still doing my skills every day. Just still keep working and grinding.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time, and I don't want to hold our panelists any further, or audience, but we just had some great comments in the chat from people thanking you so much for all your insights tonight, everybody, and hearing your experiences and your honesty. I just want to thank, on behalf of SMPA and all of the music faculty here and our students and families, everyone for coming tonight and sharing just wonderful insights and your past and your journeys. We wish you all the best as we come out of this, and we'll see you on stages, hopefully all over the country and in New York. And thank you so much, and have a great night, everybody. Take care. Thank you.